Thank you, Martin. You made some good points. And just taking us back, I want to speak to us from a perspective of we've done coffee, we oversee coffee, fisheries, forestry. Our background is we've seen enormous number of industries and how this process has evolved. As I came into this industry, we have a history of what we've seen. And to David's point and Peter's point and Joanne's point, those are amazing points. I'd like to make a couple of statements on in terms of what are we seeing. We see different consumers, different customers beyond jewelry, 110 different programs that we work in. We have a wide view of what we're seeing. There is a growing movement of ESG. That is a fact. And it's driven by two things. One, Wall Street. Wall Street is invested, trillions of dollars are coming from State Street, Vanguard, all of these guys saying, what is your responsible business? We're not going to do business with you. ExxonMobil, for the first time, had proxy voting remove 2 people from their board. For the first time this happened. This is climate advocates. Number 2 is social media. That is absolutely a big deal. Look, I don't know if you noticed this, about 3 days ago, Beyonce is in the news. Beyonce in the news for wearing a $30 million Tiffany blood diamond. This is what's in the news. This is social media right now. That's happening. And this is becoming, as we've seen in the other industries, it's cost of doing business. You start from, it's nice to have, to becoming a cost of doing business. So we look at consumers. The key is, I've heard all the statements here, it's consumers. Consumers are the key. And there are 2 things that they underpin all of this with, trust and transparency. How do you give them trust? And how do you give them transparency in the products that they're buying? And what's on top of their mind still, when we research them, is the conflict diamond. It's still number 1, top of their mind. They still believe that the conflict diamond is an issue on their mind. They're still thinking about it. And they're looking for, so just to say, this is what we've done, it's a piece of communication, is you have to standardize, give an opportunity for people to come into the business. So we've created a standard that goes to the consumer. It's a source to consumer standard, leverages synergies with across the board, with RJC, all these synergies come in, but it's a label now. It's pictured this as a hang tag where we're now going to the consumer to say, if you buy the diamond, it's like you have the seal of good housekeeping, which tells you what it is, and now you have a nutritional label. Now we've created a transparency certificate which says, when a consumer buys a product, they're going to flip it and say, what's in it? I just want to know the calories, the proteins, the fats, the carbohydrate. We're creating a transparency document. That I've mentioned because you can't have all small jewelers going to the nth degree to police their supply chain. You got to create a mechanism for them. So this is sort of a mechanism we create. It's the same fair trade model. The fair trade logo is the most recognized logo in the world. 87% of the people in the world recognize that. It's sort of the same situation. And the beauty of what also we're trying to do is artisanal. You got to give back to the artisanal. One of the drivers in our program is to give significant money back to artisanal, to give them a fair trading platform. The purpose of what we're doing is creating a transparency, giving them the standard to work with, creating that label to come to market. And so we're actually starting to engage artisanal diamond alluvial mines to start working through the process to say, you create a level playing field for them. And when you do, then you know that the jeweler is going to carry, because the jeweler is all about minimizing risk. The reason they go to recycle content is because it's lesser risk. They'd rather deal with lesser risk than take a risk of saying, if I do Fairmined, if I do something else, it's higher risk for me. So you always have to minimize the risk for the jeweler. And this is where we are driving also to say, bring artisanal in. And Martin, you bring up a great point of, should they be doing agriculture? That's a philosophical discussion that should always be had. Would I have my children in water looking for diamonds, or should they be doing something different? But how long is that going to change? This is where we're at today. Can we give them a path to a better life and a better market value? So just these are great points, and we're also trying to solve it.
I think there's 2 things. I mean, one thing that was very fascinating about the Beyonce story specifically was I wasn't educated about the origin of this diamond, and I didn't know it was a blood diamond. So her people kind of hung some responsibility on Tiffany for not bringing it up, right? You could argue whether or not she should have known, whatever. But the point is, it's interesting when you go back to the jeweler and the responsibility, that's where her people hung it when she got criticized for wearing a blood diamond. The second thing, what he discussed about a standard, the truth is this: if a consumer, we have all these different standards and things that people are ascribing to. If the consumer doesn't recognize it, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, if the industry is really serious about wanting to communicate something and have a standard around what is responsibility, then everyone needs to come around a common standard and help market it and have it mean something. It has to have metrics and accountability, but it also has to mean that the consumer knows about it. Because right now, seeing Responsible Jewelry Council or whatever it is, it doesn't mean anything, right? Fair trade means something. And if the industry is really serious, then it would back some sort of standard that could be marketed to the consumer and mean something and has metrics behind it and some sort of sense of like standardization, right? What are the categories? What we're gonna see happening, what is happening is ESG is gonna become that standard, and that's really what's gonna drive it. And that's the other thing that the industry could figure out. People today could start adopting ESG as part of their corporate goals and putting it together, because that's where they're going to have to go, even if they don't choose to go there today. But I think when you talk about artisanal miners, the third question is about capacity building. In all industries, it's like, how do you help people do their business better? Do you help them? Is the larger industry helping them figure out how to manage their books and helping create the capacity in the first place for them to be entrepreneurs first and then artisanal miners second? Because at the end of the day, the issue, I think, particularly in Africa and many of the countries around the world, is the industry hasn't built capacity. If the industry were to go away, those people have no other skills to do other things. And I think fundamentally, the role is, if you're going to go into a place and help people, then it has to be leaving them better off than they were when you got there. And it also has to be the capacity that they can do other things and have transferable skills. I mean, that's why technology has become such a huge, innovation has become such a game changer, because if you give people a little bit of knowledge, they have the capacity to sell to the world or to get fair market. So if we really want people to have those things, then the industry has to back. How do we do that? Is there a process by which people go through a training program and it's free to them, and at the end they get some sort of certificate, and it basically teaches them business basics and other sort of things, but also helps them figure out how they do their job better, so that they're not making the planet worse off. So I think I think the industry gets really caught up in doing things the way that they've always done things, and sometimes can't see the future. I think we often get, dinged because, oh, you're a Silicon Valley innovation company. It's like, but guess what? Like, in that world, you innovate, you constantly iterate and you innovate and you go into different pathways, and you don't have a linear view of how things must turn out. The industry has to look at, it's not how we've always done things, the message that we always gave people. It's like, how do we actually innovate? Because through technology and innovation, it doesn't have to necessarily cost more, but you can do things better and differently. But I don't ever hear a conversation about doing those things.
Well, I think that the RJC, and I think we really need to go to Iris a little bit about this, because the RJC is setting those standards. I don't think we have a problem with standards. I think we have good standards. I think that we are pushing the standard envelope very strongly, but we do have a dead end with the ability to implement monitoring, except in some rare cases in the artisanal sector for diamonds. I mean, we even have flagrant human rights abuses. But if you go to the Congo, let's leave, how do you call it, out of it? Or what are we gonna do with colored stones? I mean, yeah, really, Doug, it's, the question is, what are we doing as an industry with the non-easy monitoring? That's what it's about, And so you can, maybe Iris can come up, and other people have come up with standards for the artisanal sector. I think Impact has done some great work there, and other people, what was it, the Mandela standards, or what was it called, right? So there might be some standards that we can apply so that their diamonds become, or their colored stones become more.
First of all, thank you very much again. I truly enjoying the comments of each one. But please, from time to time, look at your screen with the people with hands up, because I think I put my hand up at least 3-4 times. Then I said, well, if I cannot talk, You know, so just a little thing. I mean, everybody is talking about important things, and it is essential that we understand the rules, not only the standards, the rules and the environment we are playing our game. Let me use playing our game because in this specific moment, the consideration of the consumers that I have heard obviously are important. On the other end, the rules that we are referring to when we talk, and you said how we are socially responsible. You know, in CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation, we are developing a new commission, which is on the meaning of the words we use, meaning nomenclature, meaning giving the right or what we think is the right answer when we talk with people and we understand each other. Because mostly in this world, you know, the people can talk each other, but sometimes they do not understand. And is important in the jewelry industry, I would say is essential in the jewelry industry, not only in the jewelry industry, especially, that when we talk, we speak and understand the same language. And obviously, this is something that sometimes we do not consider because we talk each other, but in the meantime, the world is changing around us. As the world has changed because of the COVID, and as the world is going to change once more and again because what is happening, you know, in many other parts of the world. So what's happened in this moment in some part of the world is affecting the rest of the world. And when we talk about responsible mining, responsible sourcing, or responsibility, or ESG, or SDGs, we have to consider how each one of us, as Peter said previously, may contribute singularly in order to give, let's say, a so-called snowball effect and add each one contribution in order to have a big contribution at the end. Now, could we solve the problem? I hope. But the fact that nobody knows if not only each one of us, but everybody in the world can solve the problems of the world, well, but we have to contribute. And we have to contribute heavily. And these, you know, everybody is talking now about standard, and I do this and I do that. Well, you know, but how many certificates I have seen in my quite long life up to now of honesty? Is there any standard for honesty? So reputation, behavior, transparency, all these are simple elements of honesty. Whatever activity we can do, whatever sustainable action we can do is related to honesty. You know, my family is in this business since 1821. And let me repeat one thing that happened to me, because a young lady came to my office and said, well, you know, my grandmother asked me to come over here because I'm going to open a shop, a jewelry shop. And when I asked my grandmother, she said, well, you go to this company because I remember a gentleman who was my father that was very honest with me. So these people is honest. Now, I don't want to talk about my company because honesty, but I'm talking generally speaking something that happened to me. Well, Martin and all the friends sitting here tonight for me, because now I am, here in Milano is midnight in 5 minutes, so more or less. But I have to tell you that whatever elements we consider, please start from honesty. And the artisanal miners that are honest, or at least a good number of them, they are, those who have to be considered, as very eloquently Doug said, yes, in the Calastone, maybe 80–90% of the artisanal miners are there. Are they following rules? Well, is our responsibility, when we talk about responsibility, to tell them what kind of rules they have to follow. Because at the end of the day, the consumer, we said previously, pay with the wallet, or pay in dollars, or pay more, or pay less. This is something that could be argued. But at the end of the day, there is a storytelling of each supplier to each client along the supply chain, and with the certification of the product and the process. But nobody, I heard, nobody is talking about certification of honesty, because you show your honesty with your behavior, with your moral principles. And if we have, as we have, moral principles, with all the due respect, then we have to put our moral principle on the table in the storytelling, including the activity that we do in producing our wonderful jewelry, diamonds, Calastone, emerald, sapphire, gold, and obviously, as my good friend Pomeroy was telling before, with all the elements that are unfortunately happening with certain minds. And obviously I support all this idea, as Jen said previously, and I strongly believe that we, in our organization, what we have done during this last 1.5 years for the COVID, we have given full support to each one of our members in the possible way we can, because what we are doing even tonight or today for you is that there is a part of the world sitting in Vegas and another part of the world sitting around the world, who in Milano, or in Moscow, or in India, or in Africa, and so and so and so. So that shows that this is the extra proof that the world is changed and the world is constantly changing. So it's up to us to adapt ourselves to the new world that we are facing every day. But the fact that honesty must be the #1 element, I would like to believe that in the world, everybody is honest. But unfortunately, if I look and I watch all the news from CNN to BBC to many others all around the world, sometimes they say that unfortunately not everybody is so honest that they claim to be. Thank you very much.